Mr. Jay Panda. Mr. Jay Panda, senior BJP leader, is joining us. Congratulations, Mr. Panda, for your victory in the Lok Sabha polls. Today was an important day for the parliament. President Draupadi Murmu addressing the joint session. Opposition says that issues of public interest, like creation of jobs, have not been addressed by the president.
Well, during President Draupadi Murmu's tenure, Bharat has achieved some very important milestones. Some of the major milestones which were mentioned in the speech today was about the Indian economy going from 11th place to 5th place in the world, particularly during a time when the global economy has been very, very challenged since the pandemic. She also spelled out the roadmap of getting to the third largest position in the world's economies, and this inherently implies opportunities for not just the youth but for the entire spectrum of Indian citizens. Now, if you look at the jobs numbers, just last week there are reports from multilateral agencies about India beating the rest of the world in terms of job creation, in terms of opportunities being created. Now, these are facts that the opposition obviously prefers to ignore. You know, the sad thing is, just yesterday, the opposition made a solemn commitment to abide by parliamentary norms and to have productive debate and discussion. But as soon as there was a condemnation of the emergency on its 50th anniversary, they broke into their traditional disruption and sloganeering, which, they broke their promise within moments. And the fact is that this is an opposition that is not able to leave its legacy behind. Even today, even 50 years after the emergency, they are not able to not only criticize the emergency, they are not able to hear anybody else condemning the emergency. And these are the people that held up a copy of the Constitution and taking their oaths as members of Parliament. It's really very, very odd.
Mr. Panda, one would say that the dark days of emergency is returning to haunt the Indian politics, with repeated reminder that is coming from the government and the BJP. Today it was the president. Yesterday the speaker spoke about it. Some say that why should a bipartisan chair like the speaker move a resolution at all?
I find this question itself very bizarre, because during the oath taking of the new members of Parliament was when the 50th anniversary of the emergency took place. Now, if you are not able to condemn the single biggest challenge to our republic, the single biggest challenge to our democracy since the Republic of India was formed, then obviously something is very, very wrong. I don't understand what is their problem in commemorating the 50th anniversary of the emergency with the condemnation of it. They are simply unable to condemn the emergency. They are unable to accept. And why should not the head of state and why should not the head of Lok Sabha condemn emergency? Because these very institutions were compromised. These very institutions were complicit in the suppression of fundamental rights and the imprisonment of so many people, including political leaders. The sad thing is, today there are certain political leaders sitting in the opposition who were imprisoned, or their fathers and predecessors were imprisoned. Now, it's bizarre that the opposition, which keeps talking about freedom of the press, keeps talking about alleged challenges to freedoms, is unwilling to condemn the actual suppression of freedoms which took place. Their hypocrisy is exposed, and the only way they can get around it is to make these fake arguments, and as I said, asking this question itself is very odd.
Okay, so, a number of opposition MPs are of the opinion that the president should have spoken on issues which are far more relevant in current times. But shifting focus now, a member of parliament from Samajwadi party, R.K. Chaudhary, has said that Sengol actually symbolizes Dandaraj and hence it should be removed. Congress party's Manikam Tagore has come out in his support as well. So Sengol is back in focus.
Look, the fact is, it is really not up to members of the opposition to decide what is required and what is not required to be mentioned by the Honorable President in talking about her government. So, these are very odd stands to take. Now, let's talk about the Sengol. These people have no problem with the symbolism of a colonial Raj which existed for so many decades. You've had the symbolism of the colonial Raj in the names of our roads, such as Rajpath, Kingsway, which has been renamed as Kartavya Path. They had a problem with that. They had a problem with the changing of the emblems of some of our armed forces to reflect our own history and our own culture, rather than that imported from foreign nations which ruled us for many centuries. The Sengol is a traditional Indian symbol of governance. There are many other such symbols. During the G20, the Prime Minister took pride in the Konark wheel, which comes from my state, which represents not just art and architecture but also science, because the wheels of the Konark temple were, they told time, and they were astronomical instruments in a way. Now, these are many different symbols of our own history, of Bharatiya history, of Indian history, that we should cherish. Now, I think some members in the opposition have been so much in thrall to the sort of continuance of the Raj, even post-independence, by a few elite families which ran the show, that they are unable to let go of that and cherish our true heritage.
Mr. Panda, I'm going to shift focus back to the issue of emergency and the resolution. The Congress has called the Speaker's resolution on emergency unprecedented in the annals of the history of Parliament, and coming from a newly elected Speaker, it is of far graver proportion. Should the Speaker have used his chair for such a resolution at all, and why on the very first day?
These stands taken by the opposition is entirely false. Day before yesterday was the 50th anniversary, and those 2 days, that is Monday and Tuesday, were oath taking under the charge of the pro tem speaker. Obviously, when members were taking oath, no other issue could be taken up, and so the 50th anniversary of emergency went by. The very next day, it is 1 day after the 50th anniversary of the emergency, that emergency was raked up. And like I say, the opposition has a DNA level problem in accepting that the emergency was wrong. That's why any condemnation of the emergency provokes a reaction amongst them to oppose it. I think they are digging themselves a bigger hole. I think Indians, thinking Indians, will recognize that their fake professions of adherence to the Constitution is exposed when they are refusing to condemn the emergency. They are refusing to apologize for the emergency. And as I have said before, it is absolutely correct that the Honorable President herself should mention it, that the Honorable Speaker himself should mention it, because we as a nation should be clear about the real biggest danger that our democracy faced within these last 75 or 80 years. And if we are unable to face that, obviously there is something wrong. And so, they are coming up with these weird technical arguments which do not withstand any scrutiny whatsoever. If on the day of the 50th anniversary of the emergency, if the oath taking had already taken place, obviously the same reference would have been made. It was made a day later, once the inductions were complete, and that's the way it ought to be.
Okay. Mr. Panda, my last question. The mandate clearly in the 18th Lok Sabha is of cooperation, but what we are witnessing is confrontation. Opposition was asking for Deputy Speaker's chair, as has been the convention in the past. The government was not ready to commit to it, and you have started, the government, the Prime Minister, the Speaker, and also the President have started talking about emergency. Many are saying that you're not able to accept the mandate of the people, and hence you are raking up this issue because you want to, corner your political opponents on this issue.
The fact remains that the pre-election NDA coalition has won a clear majority of seats in parliament and enabled a third term BJP NDA Modi government. You can't get away from that. And the opposition keeps reacting to this particular statement, which is a factual statement. It's not just the government that should be mentioning the emergency. The opposition, it is now high time for them to apologize for what their parties and what their predecessors did. It is high time for them to acknowledge and at least to keep quiet when the emergency is being condemned rather than oppose that condemnation. The whole country is aware of what happened during the emergency when actual freedoms were taken away, when newspapers were actually made to go blank and censorship was actually imposed. All the things that the opposition alleges today for which they have no facts or no proof. The fact is, if you do not condemn the emergency on its 50th anniversary, when are you going to condemn it? So these are all fake allegations. Now, as far as the confrontation, who started the confrontation? The government, the Prime Minister himself, all the constitutional speakers, they made it very clear that there should be cooperation. The Prime Minister particularly congratulated all members of Parliament and specifically mentioned that even the opposition members of Parliament who have won and come to represent their constituencies, he complimented them and congratulated them. Now, that is an extension of a hand of warmth and collaboration and friendship. And like I said, the opposition committed and promised that they would cooperate in healthy parliamentary debate. And immediately, within a few minutes, they started disrupting and heckling and protesting when the emergency was condemned. I think they get provoked too easily, and in getting provoked easily, they are exposing their true nature to the rest of the nation. If they keep this up, they will continue this track record of, the principal opposition party in the last 3 elections has got fewer seats than we have got, the BJP has got in just this election. They will continue this tradition by the way they are going in demonstrating to 1.4 billion people their true nature.
All right, Mr. Jay Panda, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your time here on NDTV.